Good afternoon. So, this is version 4 of Jerry Farrell reviewing or getting started on reviewing our family history. One of the things that occurred to me in the previous versions is that it was out of focus because the autofocus aspect of the camera was following my hands. So what's kind of cool about this is that I set the autofocus so people should be able to read better what's going on. Reviewing that my sister Kathy told me that somebody should be documenting what's going on in our past history, perhaps because it's interesting in and of itself, or because it's a step towards coming to understand who we are by understanding where we came from. So I'm doing this in May of 2021. Another thing that kind of occurred to me is that my initial title was reviewing the Farrell Harrington family tree. The thing is that every name in here, every wife or husband that married a Farrell or Harrington, this is their family tree. This is just the Farrell Harrington part of everybody's family tree. So what I'm doing is picking this particular part of the tree as a starting point. And what I'd like you to see is that this particular simpler version of the tree is really this version. This is the same thing with all of the first cousin and grandson relationships in there, who's fifth cousin to themselves. And I said that really this is no place or no way to start with the family tree by looking at it in that sort of complexity. So I redrew this. And for example, or just for some place to start, here I am, Jerry Farrell. There's my dad, Jerome T. Howard, Jerome W., my great-grandfather, John H. Farrell, my great-great-grandfather. If you put Tim here, then everything's the same. Or any one of my cousins, that anybody like the Lewis's, that Aunt Norma's kids would be right there, or Uncle Bill's, or Aunt Josephine. This would be Pat, or Marty, or Sheila, or Mary Margaret. And this level from here down would be the kids of those. So if you want to look at it from the Murray side, which is here's mom, this would be Uncle Don's children, Francine and Deej and Sean, or this would be any of the Kuklases, and this can be Aunt Barb or mom or Uncle Joe or Uncle Don or Aunt Carol. Can be anybody at that level. And this is grandma's level. So at some future point, what I'd like to do is put some boxes in here where you can just you can maybe print this out and fill your name in and then see the relationships a little better. But I've been thinking about the best way to introduce some of the fun and what I think is fun and some complexities about what's going on in our family tree. And what I did was realize that this is not the place to start. It's actually the same thing. Here's me and Dad and Grandpa and my great-grandfather and John. But it's too much, even for me. Now, one of the things that came to me from thinking about this is that Elizabeth Harrington, right there, had a brother, Cornelius Harrington. So I just said, just so we could get a feel for it, let me just put Tim in there as if he was Cornelius, and there's Maureen, because Tim and Maureen are brother and sister, just like Cornelius and Elizabeth were brother and sister. Maureen, or Elizabeth, she married John H. Farrell. So I'm just putting Bjorn in there as just a representative relationship. John is like Bjorn because Bjorn's married to Maureen, and Maureen is Elizabeth Harrington. What's interesting is, like Maureen is interesting, Elizabeth Harrington is very interesting because she's the one that connected the Murray, Harrington, Kuklis, Pellicciati, Harrington side of our family to the Farrell side of it. And Maureen's a great connector. But Maureen had a brother, Tim, and Tim married Val, but Tim here is Cornelius Harrington, and he married Elizabeth Gahan. And the reason I used Tim and Val is because they had a son, Doug, which we get. And Cornelius and Elizabeth had John Harrington, who's a son. So in the same way, over on the Farrell side, right here, the Farrells, and this is the Harrington side, Bjorn and Maureen had a son, Connor. Now, just to jump forward, Connor, which was Jerome W., had a grandson, Dad, and Doug, which is John Harrington over here, equivalent, had a granddaughter, Marlon, and here, John Harrington's granddaughter married Jerome W.'s grandson, and that's the second connection of the Farrell-Harrington tree. And Maureen and Tim, or Elizabeth and Cornelius, or Elizabeth and John H., is the first connection. Now, I find this interesting because here I am at 64 or 65. I remember for the last 50 years people telling me, listening to my dad and my grandfather and my uncles would talk and say, I know that we're related through our large family, but I don't know how. So one of the things that is fascinating is this series of sharings, which ultimately is going to lead to more fully explaining this kind of complexity, which is impossible, but it's true. This kind of sharing, which I'm going to do in 10-minute videos, is how we're going to show how, in fact, everybody was related and how we are all related. And that's part of my mission here for the next minute and a half, is to talk about how we're related. Now, normally, John H. Farrell's wife would have a son, Jerome W., just like Maureen and Beej have a son, Connor. That's their son. Beej and Maureen, or John H. and Elizabeth Harrington, had my grandfather, so he was their grandson. And then their great-grandson was my dad, and I'm the great-great-grandson also, when we look at things strictly as a Farrell. What's really interesting is because we've intermarried, we've married some of our relations and our cousins. Elizabeth Harrington has a brother here and has a nephew in John Harrington and has a great nephew in niece in Grandma Harrington and has a great great niece in my mom. But she also has a great great niece in me. The reason is because she has a brother, and John Harrington's the son, and Grandma Harrington is the granddaughter, and Mom is the great-granddaughter, and I am the great-great-grandson. So because we're married or intermarried, we're related to each other when we look at each other as a Farrell, or when we relate to each other as a Harrington. Remember, you can put any name in here. You can put Aunt Carol. So this is now true of the Pellicciati relationship to the Farrells. It's true of the Kuklis and Murray relationship to the Farrells, because we're really simultaneously both Harrington and Farrells. So that was 10 minutes and 40 seconds. And I'm going to do another version of this. The first thing I wanted to kind of work out was the autofocus so that it wasn't blurry. And if I got that done, I'm going to be kind of happy. So I'll see you in the next video.